All right, let's get started. All right, so again, this is a presentation that I made at Ecom World, the online conference last week, and I want to make sure to share with you guys here as well. And again, I only had like 20 minutes or so to present this speech at Ecom World. We have a lot more time today, so I'm going to go through it in a little bit more detail and also open up the Q&A as well. And if you have any questions, again, please comment below. All right. So, a little bit of background myself. I'm not going to speak too much here. As a lot of you guys know, I have experienced more the traditional development model as well. This is Cody, the storytelling robot. It took us like 200K to produce the first batch. And we did walk away with a deal from Shark Tank. So that was great. I call it a success. We made it work, but it was like really risky and honestly like really hard as well, and risky in terms of like a financial commitment as well. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this is the right path of going about doing things, even though it is a very traditional path. Now, when we work, so at EcommOps, I worked with many different types of clients, anywhere from drop shippers who want to level up their supply chain to eventually helping hold some generic stock, helping them with product iterations, and helping with custom developed products. So all along the entire chain. So we see that our clients, they might have different starting points, but their level of success can actually be similar. So my point is that we have clients who started with fully custom developed products. And we also have clients, sorry, just one second. Let me just mute my headphones so that I don't hear that. Yeah, so we also have clients who just started with drop shipping and they want to level up. And honestly, we've seen like clients get up to 8-9 figures doing both kind of paths. And obviously, if you start with, kind of lower risk drop shipping, it is lower risk as opposed to putting down 50K or 100K or 500K into a custom developed product. All right, now, so we're going to talk about three parts. First is how do we see at least our clients test products with almost no financial risk? And how do you leverage direct from China fulfillment for that flexibility and scalability of a brand? And also just a proven framework for this low risk, high upside kind of product iterations. All right, so let's get started. How do we test product concepts with almost no financial risk? So those of you guys who are dropshippers here, you probably will appreciate this a lot more. But one thing that everyone should know is that there's so many products in China that have yet to reach a global market. This is a very famous wholesale market for electronic components, Huaxiangbei. I think this is probably the second largest or something in China and in the world, but there's all sorts of stuff in here. Once COVID opens up and the restrictions open up, hope you guys get a chance to actually go to China, go to Shenzhen. Actually, we do actually plan like an EcommOps like China conference, by the way. So if you guys are interested when COVID relaxes in terms of travel, I love to show you guys around this place. This place is awesome. There's a lot of like random electronics that you'll be amazed at kind of seeing live. And also, many top brands kind of started as generic China products. You're talking about like stuff like Hi Smile or Hey Silky Skin or BlendJet. Now, I'm not saying they started with dropshipping. Like a lot of the brands kind of they started with a generic product, they held stock, and they improved it from there and kind of made it their own. So it's not necessarily drop shipping. However, a lot of these brands started with either generic Chinese products or very much inspired by generic Chinese products. And this is something that I kind of tell some potential clients who kind of talk to us about, oh, I want to create this amazing new product, and they have this idea and they're willing to invest a lot of money into producing something like that. And I'm going to tell you that like I would venture to guess like 80+% of the time, if you have a great vision or great idea of a type of product, most likely made in China in some form, or at least there's some kind of product that already solves kind of a similar type of issue. Let me just adjust the camera a little bit. And so there's really like no reason these days to just start from scratch unless like you're trying to do something completely new. And it is much better to take a less risky approach in terms of launching a product, which is starting with something that's actually existing already, scaling it up and customizing and making your own. Oh, hey, Daniel Chow. definitely interested in visiting Shenzhen wholesale markets. Yeah, can't wait actually. I can't wait to show you guys around. All right, so now, this is kind of like, this is kind of for you guys who might be thinking about developing a custom product. All right, so you have two scenarios, right? Scenario one is a full custom product. Let's just assume that you spend like, $50,000 budget. You have like 45,000 in tooling and production costs. You have like, maybe 5,000 in creatives and marketing budget to launch this product. And you're gonna take months, like months or maybe like a year even to actually start selling. I mean, when we developed Cody, that took us about like 8 months or so to actually get to the market, and you only get one shot with this budget. And honestly, $50,000 budget is not that much for a custom developed product. Now, scenario two is that maybe you have like 1,000 in generic stock, right? You still pre-stock a little bit to get smooth fulfillment from the start, so you're not drop shipping. You have no tooling, and you still like have like a 4,000 or 5,000 creatives and marketing budget per product, right? If you add that up, then if you do something like this might take like $5,000-6,000 to launch a product, and you might have 10 shots at goal, right? And it might take you just a week or two to actually start selling, because I'm sure a lot of you guys here know how easy it is to actually just spin up a nice looking Shopify store and creatives, and you're gonna have 10 shots at goal. And when you are successful at testing products, you 20 or 30% hit rate. We see some clients hit like a 40-50% hit rate, but still, I mean, that's a lot more shots at goal. Whereas scenario one, a fully custom product, is literally only one shot at goal, and potentially this has the same upside, right? All right, now, one thing though that I do want to discuss, especially to the dropshipping crowd, is that obviously when you think about like launching a product with very little risk, you have kind of two general options. One is just pure drop shipping. One is just using like Shopify, like plus AliExpress or CJ drop shipping, or an agent that just pure drop ships, no MOQ, right? It's obviously the lowest risk. Technically speaking, like you have zero inventory risk, but it's obviously like not like scalable over the long term, and you eventually do want to work with an agent or a factory to actually start stocking up this product. Now, option two is just hold some very limited stock, right? Because like, especially if you're selling like a generic product anyways, like there's going to be like no tooling or like, lengthy lead times. And you can just start with like a few hundred generic units, 50, depending on what the product is, which means that you can actually, or you or your supplier can actually make sure that the product is good quality from the start. And you can make sure that the product is able to be shipped quickly as you get orders from the start. So you start off in the right way. Now, I heard often about, this idea from dropshippers that, well, the whole point of dropshipping is to have like no risk, right? Sure, there is no risk. Like there is this concept of absolutely no inventory risk, but when you're talking about like, let's say 100 units of a generic product, and that product might cost like $2, right? Just for the product before shipping, a $200 risk in terms of inventory is effectively no risk. If you're running like a real business, right? You're going to be spending that much or more actually on your creatives, on your logo, even on your time, right? And you get a way better experience when you actually hold some limited stock. So I think it's totally a great idea to minimize your risk when you're starting out. But if you want to avoid stuff like Facebook feedback issues, like PayPal holds, and just the stress of like a poor supply chain to start, like just really seriously consider holding some limited stock. Actually, for our EcommOps clients, we don't really kind of like do like pure traditional drop shipping anymore most of the time. We actually work with clients to say like when they actually test, they actually do hold 50 or a couple hundred units with us. And, it's a very limited risk, because if you think about it this way, like even if a marketing campaign fails, most likely you're selling something, right? Most likely it's because you sold like maybe 20, 30 orders and you realize it's break even or worse, and then you just kind of move on. And honestly, a lot of our clients who do that, they might just end up like selling the rest of the stock organically or through an email list or something like that, right? So like really seriously reconsider like what it actually means to have as little risk as possible. And I strongly believe that this option two of at least holding some limited stock even at the start is the best way to start testing if you want to, if you want to be really serious about this. All right, so I want to address this point. I think that there's, especially like last year with COVID, or last 2 years actually, there's been a lot of talk around, okay, if you want to scale up, you have to utilize US fulfillment or local fulfillment. And there's definitely a place for that, right? And it does actually make sense, but China fulfillment doesn't suck if you do it the right way. And it has a lot of very, very notable benefits if you want to be flexible and you want to minimize your risk in terms of scalability as well. So the really important point is that if you're thinking about like the traditional model of using freight and sending it to the US and local and using local fulfillment, that really slows down the velocity and the flexibility of your supply chain. If you're using sea freight, for example, it could add months to lead time, especially these days with the supply chain issues. And local fulfillment can only really start after stock arrives. I mean, I guess you can like do like sales and start selling before the stock actually arrives, but then that kind of starts to defeat the purpose of having local fulfillment in the first place, right? So this takes so much longer to launch a new product. And also, you're going to need a lot more stock to meet your demand. And what I mean is that when you have like, let's say 2 months of lead time on a container ship, you're gonna need to plan for like 3 months of inventory to be safe, right? So you need much more stock, it's much more risk and a lot less flexible, and definitely something you don't want to do when you launch a new product, and definitely something that you don't want to do when you like start scaling up and you can't get stock to your warehouse fast enough. And yeah, so as a contrast, if you're using China fulfillment, the lead time is not weeks or months. The lead time is literally days. Actually, if our warehouse is based in Shenzhen, and a lot of factories that we work with, if they're based in this area like Guangdong, Dongguan area, we can get it in like 10 hours, right? So it's like so fast to get stock. And if it's like more farther away, it might be like maximum 4 days. All right. So it's a world of difference in terms of lead times. And that makes the product launch process so much faster. I mean, we've had examples of clients who are able to launch a product within literally just like a week. Actually, we actually just had a client, they did a massive launch with a influencer branded product. They were able to produce a program of like 40,000 units and get it to us like within like a week or so. And they sold out like all 40,000 units in 20 minutes from this massive like influencer campaign. That would be impossible waiting for all of that to be shipped in the US. I mean, they would have launched like 3 months later, and they would not have been able to correctly predict the amount of inventory because like they had to plan way ahead of the actual program itself. So this allows for just in time stock planning, which means that as opposed to in this case, you're planning for potentially 3 months of inventory. I mean, traditionally, a lot of retail brands, they plan every single quarter. Like they plan every single quarter or even half year for like 3 to 6 months of inventory because they have to account for this lead time. But when your lead time is like 4 days from the factory, they can plan every week, right? Which means that you can hold up to like 90% less inventory actually. And also like you can actually ship to US customers in as fast as 5 to 8 calendar days. That's using express shipping. There's also some cheaper shipping that's like 1 or 2 weeks, right? But still, like that's not bad at all. If you have an in-demand product, having like 5 to 8 days shipping or 1 to 2 week shipping is totally fine. And the other thing is, and I'm sure a lot of you guys who ship from China like realize this as well, local ship like US 3PL shipping to anywhere else except for the US is so much more expensive. Like it's ridiculous. It's like we were looking at the UK, for example, like literally it's double the price shipping from the US to the UK than from China, and it's like 3 times slower. So it doesn't make sense to ship from the US to global markets, and from China to all of these markets, it's a lot cheaper, it's a lot faster, which means that we have a lot of clients who, as opposed to being forced to launch in a certain market because that's what their stock is, they can launch all the major markets around the world and scale to major markets around the world as well. All right, so keep that in mind. Keep that in mind that there is the ability to have that very quick lead time type of restocking and reasonable speed fulfillment from China. And now we're going to go into this framework for how do you then iterate on product iterations at low risk and kind of high velocity or high speed. And this is really important, by the way. This is a must do if you want to have that real upside. As opposed to, for example, when if you're more in the dropshipping mindset and you're constantly testing new products, and especially these days, you're going to see that you're going to have products that just start to die out after a couple months, or even weeks sometimes, and you're always in this churn to keep testing new products, and that's totally fine. Like I'm not saying that model doesn't work. There's obviously like big drop shippers who have an entire team kind of focused on research, launching new products, and they just launch like products all the time and they make money that way, but they don't have upside for each product. That's just kind of just churning through products. If you really want to have like long-term upside for a specific product, you really have to figure out how do you start moving on from the generic version of the product to make it something that is your own, that's customized, and that is something that is potentially one of the best in the market. And when I mean customization, by the way, I don't just mean like private labeling, whatever. I actually mean like actual customizations and improving the product. Now, one thing though that I will say that obviously you want to test first, right? So you don't need to like start with customizations. You don't want to start with customizations if you can help it. We do have some folks want to work with us who say that, hey, I want to put $20,000 down or $50,000 down because I see this generic product. I want to customize it right away. I want to improve on it because I feel it could be better. And then I always ask, okay, like so how is it doing, right? Do you have like, is it proven already? And they say, oh, we're confident about it, but we haven't tested it. You're like, why not test it? I mean, it's fine. Like just start with a generic product, have some stock, and then just market it. Like it's not going to take you very long if you know how to market things to actually validate it. And honestly, if this test doesn't work out, then why are you even like committing that much money in customizing anyways, right? Because customizing a product that's not marketing validated, that is not going to make it a big product. So, this is something that you definitely want to do first still. Now, after you complete a successful marketing test with a generic product, this is where you want to start using this framework, or we suggest that you use this framework. Now, this framework is something that we constantly work with our clients as well, or we see them doing, we help them with. And this is something that works. And I really believe that this is something that generally speaking is, probably the best way to kind of think about how do you, iterate on a product that you start with low risk. So collect feedback from your customers, like be vicious about collecting feedback. Like you want as much feedback as possible. And then you iterate on the product with the factory, and then you launch and you test the features, and you rinse and you rinse and you rinse and repeat. All right. This is very important. It's a loop. It should always be a loop. The best brands on the market right now, they're always improving their product. They're always launching new fixes or new generations. This is always a loop. And if you want your product to consistently win in the market, you want to think about this loop never really stopping, right? All right. So now let's talk about one thing. Each of the things one thing at a time in detail. So the first is collecting all the customer feedback, right? So this is so important because when you think about like, if you are a brand owner and you have complaints from your customers or chargebacks, whatever, right? I imagine a lot of you guys, like obviously you would probably not want to damage your account. So you might be pretty lax about giving them a refund or return or whatever. But you really need to take it to the next level, right? We have a lot of, big clients come to us and say, okay, look, we're scaling up this product. We know it has all these issues, and we really want to work with you to improve it. And they give me like a laundry list, like 5 different issues. And okay, and I asked them, all right, now which one is most important? Because we should try to fix one thing at a time. And they can't tell me. They just say, look, I think it's this one, but I'm not exactly sure. Well, you can find out, right? You can just start a spreadsheet. Have your CS team start a spreadsheet, list it all down, all of the issues. It doesn't have to be in that much detail, but at least count them, right? Count all of the issues, whether it's through emails or calls maybe, or like comments on the Facebook post, and just actually list it out and divide it by the number of, well, I wouldn't be happy customers, but the number of orders that went out without any issues. All right. And then you want to actually divide it between what are the actual quality issues? Like people are actually complaining this product is broken, it's not working, right? Or, this is also important, by the way, what is the actual feature wish list? What do they wish it had? For example, like, oh, your product is great, but the manual is in Chinese, or there's no manual, whatever, or the product is great, but the battery life could be better. Those are kind of more feature wish list. Whereas quality issues like, hey, like the materials are breaking, it's overheating, right? It's just not working correctly. Now, generally speaking, you do want to be focusing on the quality issues first, because you want to make customers at least satisfied before you think about like what is the next step of making your product even better than your competitors. Now, the second part is actually really important as well, is you have to do a cost benefit analysis as well. It's very easy to say that, hey, like I just want to solve the biggest problem first, right? But maybe it's super expensive super expensive or super complex, right? So, I mean, this is like not necessarily the most scientific kind of process, but you do have to talk to your supplier or your factory and get their feedback in terms of like how much this things like actually cost, what the MOQ might actually be, right? And you kind of compare all of these different options. So in this like more generic example, there is like, okay, so customers were complaining about poor materials, and we could just change the materials out, so it doesn't cost that much, and honestly MOQ is not that much because it doesn't require any retooling. But here's an example, right? So I did just mention that you always want to focus on the quality issues first. However, a lot of customers wanted a better English manual, and honestly English manual costs like almost nothing. Like it costs like, I don't know, like 20, 50 cents, depending on, I mean, probably less than that actually, like, cents or tens of cents, depending on how nice you want to make it. Very low cost. There is some MOQ, but honestly, it's so cheap anyway, it doesn't really matter. So even though I was saying that you should focus on quality issues first, all of these other quality issues can be really costly and or very high MOQ when you can figure it out later, but you might as well kind of get this one off the ground as well, because it's so cheap and because like a relatively high percentage of customers were complaining about it. And then when you then want to when you actually decide what to focus on in routing improvements, focus on the top, one or two based on the percentage and the cost benefit and the cost benefit. It's really not necessary to improve everything at once. If you wanted to like kind of fix all the issues with your product, it could be really costly. It could cost like, I don't know, like 50% more on the product cost. It could add like, it could be like a 5,000 MOQ. It could add like, month onto your lead time, fixing literally everything at once. Everything that you do to a product starts to add up in its complexity, right? Whereas if you fix one thing at a time, it's much more reasonable and much lower risk as well. And I mean, obviously you continue to hopefully by this time make profits from your sales. So this is where you fund these improvements, these incremental improvements with your profits, right? And then you want to test your improvements as soon as possible on the market. I mean, this is part of the reason why you want to just improve a couple things at once. So you start fulfilling the new version of the product, you track which of the orders are the new versions, and you definitely want to wait for like at least like 500 to 1,000 units to arrive at customers, and you want to see what the feedback actually is. And this is actually really important because like in a good case, in kind of like a a positive case, you're going to start seeing results right away. Like because we changed these materials, no one complains about materials anymore. Because we added English manual, like no one complains about the manual anymore, right? And you have much less issues. However, you might have a situation where it's the opposite, right? Maybe you change the materials, but it's not what people actually wanted. Maybe it doesn't feel good to them. Maybe it causes allergic reactions, right? And maybe like it was not the right choice, and you then want to adjust accordingly. But why? You want to focus on one or two things at a time, because otherwise, if you solve like all of these issues and it took you like 2 months and a lot more money, and customers still kind of complaining about various things, that's just not efficient, right? Whereas if you focus on one thing at a time and just are vicious about collecting feedback and actually testing it, then it's going to be a lot more efficient, cost effective, and less risky as well, and honestly just more productive. And then after that, you start moving on to the next quality issues, right? Overheating, for example, in this case, and you keep moving on and you eventually move on to the future wish list. All right. Now, so this is nothing new, by the way. It's a framework that we kind of use, but this is literally nothing new. This is kind of what like the big brands do. If you think about the iPhone, right? I have my iPhone with me right now. I've used iPhone since whenever it was that they were actually launched. That's not like it's like 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I forget exactly, but like the iPhone has changed throughout the years, and they didn't like, yeah, like Steve Jobs, rest in peace. Like he's the original visionary, but as it improved, it was not just based on random ideas, right? It was actually based on customer feedback. And this is something that iPhones do, like car companies, like every successful big brand, they follow this general framework. They collect feedback, they iterate on improvements, and they test on the market, but they also don't make like massive changes, willy-nilly, and potentially have a lot of issues after the fact. And one really important thing as well to kind of counter what you're saying is you don't need to change everything. All right. What is considered to be the best version of a product on the market is not determined by what you think it is. It's determined by what the customer actually needs or what they actually want, what they actually react to, right? So for example, we've had situations where a client says that I want to add like 5 different colors. And I would ask them why, right? Like did the customers ask for it, right? And they might say, oh, I assume because this is a female product, so they want more colors, they want pink, orange, whatever it is, right? But no one actually asked for it. It completely changes how complicated your SKU management is, and it's just unnecessary, and no one really cares, even if you do want it, and it's just like not worth it, and it potentially can lose you money as well. I mean, if you think about the iPhone, I mean, the iPhone had for like decade or more, they had like 2 colors, right? Or maybe 3 colors. Like I think at first it was just black, and then they introduced white, and they had gray for a while, and now they had a couple more colors, right? I mean, like they sold like what is it, hundreds of millions of iPhones, whatever, like without like adding more colors. So now obviously like certain products, colors really do matter. Like if you're selling clothing, for example, maybe colors do actually matter, but then your customer is going to tell you about it, right? If you sell yoga pants and your customers are telling you, I want more colors, then you should listen to your customers, and they're going to buy more colors anyways, right? But if they don't care, then you're just probably wasting time, effort, and money, and it's just unnecessary, right? And then now we kind of come back to, after talking about this whole framework, now you guys probably will understand why more. Having the ability to have the flexibility of fulfilling from China is so important, at least for like new product launches. If you think about like normal consumer products, normally like product upgrade cycle is maybe 2 years or so, or between 1 to 3 years or so, right? Now with China fulfillment, this cycle is like months or weeks sometimes, right? Faster cycles means that you can iterate more. You can fix less with each cycle, which means less risk, but you still kind of get there, and you get there faster, and you have the same kind of upside, but you have much lower risk. All right, so that's it for this presentation. Now, I definitely want to continue discussion, so I'm going to go through and kind of answer some of these questions you guys might have. So, oh, and by the way, guys, if you guys joined a little bit late, comment below if you have any questions about this presentation or about like product development, supply chain in general, and also comment slides below if you guys want to get these. I haven't asked for them before, and Camilla is going to send them to you. All right, so let me address some questions here. So Nazar, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Thank you for the great presentation. How do you deal with products which require certification for UU markets? So such as CE, etc. Now, this is more of a general question. Basically, how do you deal with products that require certifications at all, right? Whether it's for the UU market, whether it's for the US market, like, if it's a medical product, like FDA certs, for example, well, you get them, right? So certifications are not difficult to get, assuming that your product fits all the criteria. Now, obviously, if your product is not designed correctly and it's dangerous, it catches fire, you're not going to pass the certification, right? Now, this is where like, depending on the product itself, depending on the factory itself, they might already have like the CE certificate already, right? Because if they're exporting in bulk to the EU, they're not going to be able to do that without certification anyway. So, if it's like, if you want to find something ready, something that's more generic, then it's probably pretty important for you to actually find a product that has that kind of certification from the factory, right? Now, especially if you're kind of scaling up a bit and you're doing well, and the product doesn't have a certification, it doesn't actually mean that it can be certified. It might just mean that it just happens that the factory hasn't exported to the EU before. So all you really need to do is to either yourself or you work with the factory to say that let's send it to a testing lab, right? It really doesn't cost that much. Depending on the test itself, it could be, I'd say that you should probably plan for a couple $1,000s, potentially a little bit less, or potentially a little bit more, depending on what the actual certification is, right? And they test it and they can provide a certification and, kind of just and provide a stamp on it for you, right? So yeah, I would say that like, if you're pure drop shipping and you don't have any control of the product, then obviously it's more of a concern. But if you're kind of going through this model, then there's no reason why you can't just get a certification yourself as you're ready to scale. All right, next question is Matt. My impression is that you primarily work with somewhat small products, which is an issue for me. Do you simply exclude products above a certain size? So the reason, well, it's not necessarily that we or like China fulfillment agents like don't work with products over a certain size, is more because it gets a lot more expensive to ship for you as well. So I'd say that anything that's over like a couple kilograms, anything that is kind of bulky, it starts to get like quite expensive to ship, right? You don't want to ship like furniture, for example. You don't want to ship like a desktop computer. But obviously most consumer products are below a certain weight. But I will just say that if you are kind of working with a very heavy, bulky product, you're probably just stuck with the traditional method of just using sea freight and local fulfillment. Actually, I'm sure you guys know Gabriel Saint Germain. Sorry, so he actually is working on two brands. This slide will show you guys. Yeah, so he's actually working on two pet brands. One is a pet toys brand that we're working with him, a fully custom brand that we're fulfilling directly from China. And the other brand, he's like, it's like cat furniture, right? And it's like impossible to ship from China directly, and it's like super heavy, super bulky. So he actually works with a friend of mine that to actually organize like large scale sea freight, shipping into Canada, and then he actually uses local trucking fulfillment to actually fulfill the orders, and he's doing very well, by the way, because like the thing about big and bulky products is that everyone has the same issue, right? It's costly to ship. It's costly to fill, it's costly to store, which means that your competitors are also considering the same kind of margins as well. So he actually sells the cat furniture products at a very high, and it's fine. He does really, really well because he has some competitors and they also have to sell very expensively because there's no way to actually ship it or fulfill it cheaply. So yeah, now I think that there's also some specifications I could share, Mads, that basically if your product is over 60 centimeters in any one dimension, or over 90 centimeters, the width times height times length in centimeters, plus the width plus height plus length in centimeters, if it's over 90, then that's generally considered oversized for normal consumer package shipping for something like Uni Express or 4PX, for example. So you do want to generally keep under that. Now, obviously, like it's your business decision what you want to sell. If you want to sell a heavier and bulky product, then you probably need to consider sea freight. Whereas like obviously if you want to follow this model and you want to like just sell some kind of consumer product that's a little bit smaller, a little bit more lightweight just to make money, then there's obviously a lot of options out there for you to choose from. All right, so I'm going to go through some of the questions that I got in chat. And you guys here, if you have any other questions, please comment below as well. All right, so got a question in chat. Who can use 4PX logistics? Only Chinese or other people too from outside China to import, export? So more generally, as opposed to just talking about 4PX, I'll talk about 4PX or Uni Express or Yanwen, any of the direct from China couriers. So the question is that, is it only Chinese people or other people too from outside China? I mean, you don't have to be Chinese to use like 4PX or Uni Express, but you have to have a warehouse in China. I mean, that's the biggest thing because they're couriers. They have to pick up from somewhere and someone has to prepare the packages as well and label them. I mean, it's just as if you were fulfilling from like your own home, maybe like, in using USPS or Royal Mail, depending on where you are. So technically speaking, you don't have to be Chinese, but you have to have like a Chinese warehouse, right? So I'm not sure if that answers your question. And if more what you mean is that, can you just have them like pick up from your factory, for example, and then just drop ship for you? No, they won't be able to do that, right? If you have a factory and you want to kind of use like something like Uni Express or 4PX, they have to then act like a fulfillment center as well. They have to actually pack the orders, they have to receive the orders, they have to actually label the orders, right? And honestly, a lot of factories, like some factories are starting to do that, but they're not doing it the most efficiently. So I kind of caution against it if they're not experienced with fulfillment, because fulfillment is a very different animal than like actually producing goods. So generally speaking, if you're not based in China, if you don't have your own physical presence in China, you should definitely probably find like a 3PL or a partner factory that offers this kind of fulfillment for you. All right, so let me scroll through. By the way, any other questions below, please, any other questions, please just comment below. Let me see. Oh, I have, yeah, so I had a question here of, someone's asking me about this. Oh yeah, someone's asking 5 to 8 days shipping. How do you get 5 to 8 days shipping? My shipping is not 5 to 8 days. My shipping is like, what they say, my shipping is like 3 to 4 weeks sometimes. Well, I mean, so if you're using like something like Uni Express and you are getting like 3-week shipping to like a major market like the US or UK, then probably something you're doing is not correct. Your supplier doing is not correct. And actually, I'm assuming that if you're getting like 3-week shipping like consistently or 2-week shipping consistently, like on average, then most likely your supplier is probably just drop shipping, right? If you have stock, there's no reason why it should take like 2 weeks on average, right? Now, obviously, like, even the express shipping line, the 5 to 8 days is probably like, the 80% or so. There's going to be sometimes, I mean, especially like more recently, there was kind of a period of COVID lockdowns in Shenzhen that actually slowed it down so that the express shipping was up to like, 10, 12 days occasionally sometimes. But most of the time, it actually is 5 to 8 days. And I'll tell you guys why. Let me just show you guys a map, right? So how something like Uni Express works is that, so assuming that your supplier or your fulfillment center is in Shenzhen, how Uni Express works is that they collect all of the packages from your fulfillment center. So we at EcommOps, we're actually right based around here. And then Uni Express, for example, is based right around here. 4PX is based right around here. All right, so they're all very, very close. They collect all the packages, they pick up, they process at their warehouse, and then they send it via truck to Hong Kong. And by the way, this is all like a matter of like hours of like driving distance, right? So this process from where it goes to their warehouse to Hong Kong, this is probably like maybe a day or so, right? Like, like one full working day or so. It gets on the plane, right? Let's talk about the UK first, because UK is actually fastest. We've seen orders to the UK for like as fast as 2.5 days. Like, it's crazy. But like, let's talk about the UK first, right? Hong Kong to Heathrow, right? It seems like a long distance, but there's a lot of flights from Hong Kong to Heathrow. It's a very common flight. This takes, let's just say like an evening or something like that, or like, half a day or so. It arrives in the UK, gets injected into the system, and that might take 1.5 days more at the fastest. Sometimes there's a weekend, sometimes less efficient. So this is why, like, from Shenzhen to the UK using the express line, you're looking at like maybe 3 to 7 days. That's calendar days, right? And then similarly to the US, right? Hong Kong to like LA, or to New York. I think actually it's even faster to LA than Heathrow, or I mean, it's pretty close at least, right? It goes over here and then they inject into USPS priority, and that takes like 2 days extra, right? So that's why in the US, on average, it's like, 5 to 8 days or so, right? So there's no reason why Uni Express takes that long. Now, for the economy services, it's a little bit slower. They get a little bit less priority. In the US, for example, the like regular ordinary lines, they use USPS first class. So this kind of takes like more like 5 days in the US, and the planes get less priority. So that's where it kind of might take something like more like 6 to like, 12 or 14 days or so. So like 1 or 2 weeks, right? But it shouldn't take 2 weeks on average. You know why it's taking 2 weeks on average? It's because, like, say your supplier is based here and you're probably just drop shipping with them, right? Like, they need like a week to get stock from wherever, and they give you a tracking number, and your tracking number has no data for like a week. So what happens when that happens is because they don't have the stock yet and it's not processed yet. So anytime you kind of see just completely no data for like a week or 2 weeks, it means that, like, if you see that consistently, sometimes stuff just kind of gets lost for a while, like once in 100 packages. But if you consistently see that, then it most likely means that your supply is actually not stocking up. All right, question from Anthony. Quick question, guys. How long do you estimate delivery to Africa takes? Say South Africa or Ghana. Now, unfortunately, in terms of African countries, there is no consistent shipping to somewhere like Ghana. That is very unfortunate, but it is just the reality. In terms of the African countries, the only consistent shipping that these services offer is actually to South Africa, and I'm actually gonna load up some data recently, and I'll actually check out, like, how fast South Africa has been. So South Africa has a line. I believe it should take like 1 or 2 weeks normally, but I'll double check as my data loads. But Unfortunately, the rest of Africa, it's just actually wait. So I actually do see South. Oh, actually, recently South Africa has been pretty fast. Let me just make sure that I'm looking at the right country code though. South Africa is ZA. Let me just search for ZA here. Actually, recently, South Africa has not been very fast. Like it might take like 20 days or so. So unfortunately, that's something that has been a little bit slow recently. So yeah, South Africa, we're probably looking at an average of 20 days or so. As fast as 2 weeks. But yeah, South Africa, unfortunately, is not that fast. Normally speaking, though, if it's not for COVID, South Africa is usually not that bad. South Africa might be something like 7 to like 15 days, maybe 20 days or so. Now, the problem like shipping direct to Africa is that there's two things, right? First is that the reason why like there are faster shipping lines like the EU and the US is because they're obviously major e-commerce markets. And a company like Uni Express, they actually built up the infrastructure to actually offer very efficient shipping in those areas, which means that they actually book the freight planes. They have a local warehouse to inject it into a local system. But unfortunately, there's just not as much kind of e-commerce demand in the Africa region. Like stuff like cash on delivery is a lot more popular. And just generally speaking, like just the e-com boom is not really kind of, come to fruition yet, but it doesn't mean in the future. And the other thing is just the infrastructure, unfortunately, is just not quite there in a lot of areas of Africa. That being said, though, I honestly think that there's a huge opportunity in Africa. And actually, as you said, Anthony, a good alternative would be to ship in bulk to a warehouse in the US or Africa and then ship out when the customer orders. So if you're gonna ship into Africa, definitely don't put inventory in the US. It'll be way too expensive. It'll be way too expensive to ship from the US to Africa. But yes, what I see a lot of people doing is actually holding inventory within Africa. And I honestly think that's a big opportunity if you can handle it. I think that you probably have to like understand the geography a little bit more, understand the market more. But if you really understand certain countries, if you're from Africa, for example, we've seen like a lot of big guys do really great numbers just importing like goods in bulk from China and just selling locally, so it's definitely a big opportunity if you can have a physical presence there. All right, there's a question. Do we face custom issues while selling in the UK market? I'm all in the US and it's not having until any $850 worth of products. All right, so customs or VAT is probably what you're talking about. Now, this is kind of a whole other topic. I think that if you should probably search on my YouTube for my VAT videos to kind of get more details here because it's a very big topic. But for the UK specifically, you don't have to pay customs to actually ship the packages. However, technically, you're supposed to collect VAT. All right, so Uni Express is not going to charge you VAT, and it just goes through fine, right? But legally speaking, you're supposed to collect VAT. So now that's up to you. Right. And I'll just leave it at that. It's kind of similar situation to sales tax in the US, for example. You're not forced to deduct it, but you're supposed to pay it legally. So I'll leave you at that. All right. So Alexander, thanks for your time. What about Latin America? Yes, I am assuming talking about Latin America shipping times. Not great, to be honest, like definitely not the best. Let me actually just kind of look at some of these markets. Yeah, so in terms of Latin America, there's only a couple countries that even have any kind of shipping that is reasonably reliable. And that should be Brazil. I think it might be Chile, actually. Let me see. Yeah, so Brazil. Oh, Brazil recently is actually not too bad, actually. So Brazil is a country that we have decent volume. Brazil has been looking at like 12 to 22 days or so, which is actually not bad in the grand scheme of things because Brazil used to be a lot slower. And I think I only have Brazil on here right now. But yeah, so anyways, so for Brazil, we've been looking at 12 to 22 days or so in terms of just real data. Now, the thing about Brazil, and I assume that you're selling, in Brazil, you probably know this, you have to collect their tax ID at checkout. If you don't have their tax ID, it's going to get stuck at checkout. So we force all our clients to collect it. I think one of the reasons why like you see inefficient shipping to Brazil, like very slow shipping, is that when you don't force to collect that information, then it might actually just get stuck, and that's what slows things down. Oh, and by the way, we have like 4 more minutes, so I continue at the end. So if anyone else has any questions, please comment below. All right, so another question is, do you have any thoughts about the new Shopify fulfillment network? Yeah, so I've been following for a while, actually. I think it's a very smart, very, very smart move by them. Let me just kind of put it here, right? I mean, my thought is it's a very smart business move by them. They are starting up, or maybe started up already. I'm not exactly sure like how much progress they've actually made, but they're essentially building out their own 3PL network, and they're supposedly offering 2-day shipping. They have distributed inventory, and the thing is like what they're doing here is basically kind of a similar thing to what Amazon has done with FBA, right? Amazon didn't have fulfillment before, and then they got into kind of fulfillment, and Shopify is doing kind of the same thing. And I think it's a really smart move, to be honest, because what it is that they're just moving up the value chain, right? And I think it's actually also good for Shopify customers as well, because presumably, when you have like more of an integrated value chain, you can make money with less margins as well, and hopefully pass it on to their customers, and hopefully it can actually be reasonable price. I mean, for example, Amazon FBA, if you can kind of like do it efficiently, it's actually like some of the lowest fulfillment costs you're ever going to see, right? Amazon has other issues though, but the fulfillment costs are extremely low because of their own integrated fulfillment network. I have a lot of good friends at Amazon, by the way, and I know for a fact that Amazon FBA does not make money, by the way. It just well, I wouldn't say it loses money, but it's not, it doesn't make money. And they use it kind of more to expand their reach, expand their customer base, and offer a better customer experience for them. So definitely speaking, I'm not saying that this is definitely going to work, but I do actually think that once you have the ability to access it, you should at least try it. Right now, one of the problems though with FBA, and potentially a problem with Shopify, is that because they handle all of this, and they talk about like all of these, what's that thing about distributed networks? They talk about the distribution. Where is it? Oh yeah. So like they distribute across like different networks for the 2-day shipping, right? One of the downsides of that, it becomes a black box, right? It's unpredictable sometimes. Like we work with Amazon FBA before, and sometimes it takes like forever to actually get somewhere. So this is something that you want to be aware of. All right, so Anthony, one other thing, I plan to sell a class 2 medical device in the US, but it looks like you need approval from the FDA and it costs $17,000. Well, yeah, I mean, I was just kind of talking about certifications before, but yes, FDA approval is one of the most challenging and most expensive. And the thing is, like, it's when you're talking about a class 2 device, class 2 device is, I mean, like a class 1 device is, I don't know, stuff like, I don't know, beauty kits or whatever, stuff like that, that has like not much risk to the user. But the thing is, like class 2 medical devices, depending on what they do, they actually do have, they actually do potentially have, some risk to the patient and the user. And the US FDA, they play no games. So unfortunately, like if you're saying that it costs $17,000 for approval, yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure, because like we tend to avoid these things because they're so complicated. But if it is something that requires class 2, unfortunately, you either have to like figure out some way of getting that approval, or potentially this is not a good product to scale. All right, so very last question here. I've been lacking in taking action on having my US Shopify store set up in the UK, because I believe Facebook ad spend will be on my US ad account. And does this spoil the pixel data between among two countries? No, it doesn't. I mean, It literally doesn't. I mean, so I'm not a Facebook marketing expert, and so I can't exactly tell you the exact details. However, the reason why I'm confident though that it's not a problem is because we've had so many clients who like might have started with just the US market, for example, because they were stuck because they only had US stock, right? And then they started using us for international shipments, and like almost overnight, and by overnight I mean like a couple of weeks, they like doubled their sales because like now they're able to fulfill from China to around the world. And I imagine all they really did was to just like start adding these other countries to their to their campaigns. Some of them also localize different languages. But yeah, it's definitely not going to ruin your pixel or spoil the data or not work. It definitely still works in the right way. All right, well, thank you guys. This is Dayu from EcommOps. See you guys next time.